famously left-wing presenter. Well, of course she's left-wing. She works for the BBC. She presents their flagship news show every morning, Radio 4, The Today Show. Used to be required listening. Used to set the agenda for the day. I don't think it does anymore. But anyway, she's done very well for herself, and good luck to her. But she says she has never felt so much racism in the UK as she had over the past year. She says that particularly after what was going on in the summer, you know, like buying into the fact that those rioters, those working class white rioters, who did behave appallingly, they're racists. They must be racists. I say, I'm not condoning them. I'm certainly not condoning what they did. But I say they're not necessarily racists. I say they're people who are protesting about the migrant crisis. I say they're people who are worried about our borders, worried about, if you like, British culture being threatened. That doesn't make them racist. But people on the left think if you're worried about the migrant crisis, if you're worried about our borders, you don't like the idea of thousands and thousands of foreigners, illegal foreigners coming across the channel to be allowed to stay in Britain. If you don't like it, you're a racist. You're racist, far-right racist. No, you're not. No, you're not. But the lefties think that you are. So she says she has never felt so much racism in the UK. This is a country in which she, Mishal, a child of Pakistani-born Muslim parents, has risen to the very top of the media ladder, is one of the BBC's highest paid presenters. She earns hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, is venerated, respected, revered, because she's a major BBC presenter. And she says this is a racist country. If it was a racist country, I would suggest that the Muslim child of Pakistan-born Muslim parents would not prosper, I've lived in different countries, and this is not a racist country. This is a very tolerant country, one of the most tolerant countries on the face of the earth. Every country has racists. Every country has a problem. But to start saying that somehow or other Great Britain, the UK, is some kind of festering pit of vile racism, is just not true. And it annoys me. Let's see what my next guest thinks. A columnist for The Telegraph, Robert Taylor. Hello, Robert. Would you agree with me that Mishal is rather exaggerating when she says this country is racist?
Well, it's very difficult for a white bloke to comment on that. That's what I am, of course. That's what you are. But what we can go on is the international surveys about racism in the world as a whole. And according to the World Values Survey 2023, only 2% of Britons would feel uncomfortable about living next door to somebody of a different race. Compare that with, in Italy and Spain, 12% and 13% respectively. So compared to other countries in Europe, by a measure which is accepted as a good way of defining whether we live in a racially tolerant society, Britain is regarded as one of the least racist countries on earth. So it's not me saying that. Now, I can't say that as a white bloke because I don't experience racism. So all I can go on is what the international surveys say. And the international surveys show, without a shadow of doubt, that while there is still racism in the UK, and there's no question about that, we are very, very racially tolerant compared to just about every other country on earth.
Yeah, I mean, having lived in America for 10 years, basically every city in America, particularly the big ones, they're sort of segregated. The whites live in one area. Like where I used to live in LA, there's the black area, and then there's the well-off black area, the comfortably off, the better off black area, and so on and so forth. It's like divided down racial lines. We don't have that really in our cities. We don't have that across the country. And in fairness to Mishal, in the same breath, she said, the racism I've experienced over the last year, and as you quite rightly say, Robert, we mustn't it's not our position to comment on that. We're not women of colour, as it were. We're not Muslims. But she says, she does also say that Britain is probably the only country in Europe where it is possible to achieve her level of success in broadcasting with a very obviously Muslim name like mine. Only in Britain, she said, this was in 2018, would my career be possible. So you know, she sort of says one thing and then another. What I'm getting at, Robert, is this is what gets on my nerves. Mishal and her ilk, all those BBC types, you know, they see people protesting, worried about the migrant crisis, and they decide that A, you must be far right, and B, you're racist. You know, that worrying about the migrant crisis, worrying about our sovereign borders, worrying about levels of immigration makes you a racist. That's not true, is it?
No, it's absolutely not true. And what I would say about this, Kevin, is if we are becoming a more racist society, I would say to you, why is that? Why is it that people like Mishal Husain might be experiencing more racism? Now, a lot of people on the left would say it's something to do with Brexit, or it's because Trump got elected last week. It's because of people getting alarmed by Keir Starmer being elected. But I wonder if there's something else going on here, Kevin. And I think it is that we are increasingly encouraging people in our society to think about themselves, not as human beings, but by their race, by their sexual orientation, in other words, by identity politics. And you will have noticed, I'm sure, Kevin, that play in the West End earlier this year called Slave Play, that on certain nights during the summer was shown to, and I'm not making this up, a black-only audience. You were only allowed into the audience if you were or identified as black. So whereas you and I were brought up to be colorblind, to see people as people, not as black, white, or mixed race or anything in between, we are now increasingly being encouraged to see people according to their race or their sexual identity. That is causing, in my opinion, more racism in our society. And if we are becoming a racist society, I think we can point the finger of blame at identity politics.
Yeah, but having been around the world, having lived around the world, this is not a racist society. I mean, as you quite rightly say, Robert, all countries have their problems with racism. Racism, like the poor, will always be with us to some extent. But in Britain, it's pretty marginal. You know, you go to France, go to Paris, all around the outside of the city are these huge sort of ghettos where all the immigrants live. You know, France is far more racist than us. America, definitely. You know, it's not that we don't have some problems, of course, but I just think that people like Mishal Husain, who just go on about it, you know, they're missing the point. They're missing the point that this is not a racist country. Robert, go on, one last point. Go on.
Okay, I just will make that one last point to support what you're saying, Kevin. We have assimilated 7 million immigrants since the year 2000. 11 million people in the UK have been born outside the UK, and we are now currently housing nearly 500,000 refugees from Syria, Ukraine, Afghanistan. That doesn't sound to me like the most racist society in the world.
Yeah, we've got to stop knocking ourselves on this basis, particularly these people from the left. Robert, great to talk to you as always. Thank you very much for your time. That's Robert Taylor, columnist at The Telegraph.